Okay, at this point, a few years after this, we got somebody who's probably not very happy. So somewhere in childhood, this young little person kind of looks at their life and says, I don't know, something's not right here. I've been trying to get happy and it just isn't working. And we all kind of make another decision that there must be something wrong with me. This should be working, but it's not. So we make a fifth decision that it is important that I be different. For many, this is the great tormentor of their lives. Constantly suggesting that you're not okay the way you are. And for others, it just happens occasionally. Every now and again, five will pipe up and say you ought to be different. But for many, this is just the great tormentor, this inner sense that I'm not okay the way I am. This particular decision may be one of the biggest obstructions going inside the self, because it grabs onto these ideas and says, if I use this, it'll repair me. I can use these ideas to fix me because I'm broken. There's something wrong. Some piece was left out. I can find it and put it back in or whatever it is. And then I'll be different and then I'll be happy. And so we go take all this stuff and use it as a tool to improve ourselves instead of what it was intended for. Okay? This is not to fix you because there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. This is just a thing that's been developed to do something that seemed reasonable as a child but doesn't exist. And so it makes things look kind of weird. But there's nothing wrong with you. The fact is, really, if you're broken, what are you going to do about it? What if you find out that some piece that's supposed to be in a human being isn't in you? What are you going to do about it? You're going to grow it? You're fine. Okay? But the sense that I got to do something to make me better, to improve myself, which is rampant throughout the world, isn't it? You can go to school and learn new skills and all sorts of new things. You can go to trade schools. You can get a better job. You can get a better relationship. I mean, just go to the bookstore sometime and go into the how-to or the self-improvement section. It is just an obsession with us, isn't it? Some do it with spiritual how-to, self-improvement. Some do it with psychology and self-improvement. Some do it with horoscopes. Others do it with all sorts of things. And some people do it with success. They're going to make themselves a better person by going out and getting a great job and getting the house with the picket fence and the right wife and the 2.5 kids and 2-car garage and all that. But it's all, it seems, about satisfying this decision that there's something wrong with me and I got to make myself better. I'm not okay the way I am. I can't just sit here right now, just the way things are, and say, it's great. I got to go get something to make me okay. That's decision number 5. It is important that I be different. And you know, I can't do that. I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. I don't know how to be different. I can get a new habit. I can put on a new behavior like a suit of clothes, you know. I can do all sorts of things, but every time I check, it's always me doing it. I'm not any different. I'm just acting a little different or something. This doesn't work. But that's one of the things that happens with these ideas, no matter where you get them from, whether it's from here or some other place. We want to turn them into a bunch of ways to make me different. because I'm not okay right now. And it just isn't true. It's just disappointment because I can't actually get what I want out of life, called being non-disturbed. You see, that's where this decision comes from. It's not that you're not okay, it's just that as a child you made a decision about what you wanted out of life that you can't have. That's all there is to it. I suspect that if you were to start doing something else, you would find you're just fine. But of course, there's something wrong with you if you judge yourself by the impossible. I can't do the impossible. What's wrong with me? And we almost make jokes about that in this world, don't we? Today we'll do what's difficult, tomorrow we'll do the impossible, or something like that. I've heard things like that. It's like we don't even use words to mean anything. We just blap out this word impossible and say, oh yeah, we're going to do that tomorrow. Well, I mean what I said. This is impossible, okay? This is not something you can work really hard at and get tomorrow. This is not just like a funny word where you say this is a little bit more difficult than stuff that's just hard. You can't do this. So of course, if you think you can and work really hard at it for a long time, you're going to think there's something wrong with you because you ain't got it. And then adolescence kicks in and we make a final decision. And basically how this goes is, I was wrong when I made decision number 5. It's not me that's got problems, it's you. It's all the rest of you who are messed up. I'm fine. So we say, it is important that everything else be different, that he, she, it be different. If you would just change, then I would be fine, in other words. If circumstances were different, I could show my true worth. You see, I really am just the most wonderful thing that ever happened on the planet Earth. It's just nobody ever gives me the opportunity to let it shine out. A lot of people say that. Maybe not quite the facetious way I just did, but a lot of people say that. That's decision number 6. If only the entire world would change, then I would be happy. Okay? See, we got to keep the conflict going. This one says it's all my fault. This says it's everybody else's fault. Couldn't do without that inner conflict that says it's me or it's you. So I guess we got to do something. One of the things about playing the game this way is that it is all based on sensory experiences. And as far as the senses are concerned, there are opposites, aren't there? From the senses point of view, there's dark and there's light. There's hot and there's cold. There's pleasure and there's pain. There's hungry and there's satisfied. You see? So that's the way the senses work. There are apparent opposites all over the place. But the fact is they don't exist. It's all just the way we sense it. There's no such thing as hot and cold. There's just different degrees of temperature, and one I like, so I call it pleasant, and the other one I think is too cold, so I call it cold, and the other one I think is too hot. But all there is just a thermometer sitting there that goes up and down with different degrees. Isn't that right? There's no such thing as light and dark. There's different degrees of light. Okay? So we think in opposites because that's the way the world seems to us. But there's a lot of things in this world that don't have opposites. They're just sitting there, all by themselves, just sitting there. And there is no opposite to them. But we think there is, and we actually make stuff up. It bugs us so much that something has no opposite that we'll make up something and say, well, that's the opposite of it. I'll give you an example. Love and hate. Aren't those opposites? Isn't that what we've been told to believe? That there's love and then there's hate. Aren't those opposites according to what we believe?
Wouldn't indifference be a more likely candidate for opposite?
What's that?
I was wondering out loud if indifference might be a more likely candidate for the opposites
of love. Okay, we'll have love and indifference then. I got no problems, because as far as I'm concerned, there is no opposite to love. There is no opposite to it. Hate is not the opposite of love. Indifference is not the opposite of love. There is no opposite to love. I don't see one. What I see is different degrees of ability to love. That's it. And I see lots of experiences that come out of different degrees of ability to love. I don't know which one is the opposite of love. We all love in whatever degree that we're able. Maybe hate is one of the things that happens when there's not a great degree of love there. Maybe indifference is one of the things that happens. Maybe boredom is one of the things that happens. So, I don't know that love has an opposite. I know one day I had an odd experience that I later found out is quite common. I work with some people who were in the American Indian tradition, okay, or kind of used to be, some of them still are, some left. And so one time they conned me into going to one of their little lodges, and I went inside this little hogan, and they brought some hot stones in and threw water on them. That's what they do, okay. And I went out of there later, and I was just talking to some people that were in there, and I described what I saw inside there, and everybody looked at me and said, "Oh my God, he's one of those people who can see in the dark." I didn't know it, but there was no light in there, and everybody else couldn't see. And they have a word for that. They call it the black light. But you believe in dark and light. I didn't know it was dark. I didn't know I was supposed to be able to see. So I went ahead and did it anyway. And I found out later that a lot of people, well, not a lot, but some people have that experience. They can go into that little lodge that's all closed in a dark night, and they can see. And other people don't. So where's the opposite? There was no lack of light there for me. Apparently there was for some other people. I don't know that there is an opposite to light. Although I know that the senses tell me that there is. But occasionally they forget to do that. And there's no light there, and eyes go ahead and see anyway. And you can believe that story or not. I don't really care. But that's the way the senses report things to us because of the pleasure-pain thing. It's on purpose. You need to know when something is damaging you. So the senses have been set up to report the world as though there were opposites, when in fact there are degrees. There are degrees of fear, degrees of love, degrees of temperature, degrees of this, degrees of that. It's based on dealing with sensations, and it thinks in opposites. It has two opposites to it. Every decision ever made has its opposite. We see the world that way, and the consequence is that we sit around in inner conflict a lot of the time, saying, I'm not sure what's true and valuable. And we call that making a decision or a choice. In fact, as I like to point out, a lot of people say that man is the animal that chooses, that makes decisions. I think that's an aberration. I think the fact that we have to do that, sit around making choices and decisions, is a consequence of the fact that we've fallen apart into pieces, and there's no one person there anymore, that if we were integrated, we probably wouldn't make near as many choices as we think are necessary. It would be much more clear what would be taking me towards my purpose. But when I got two opposing ideas about how to do that all the time, we spent a lot of time making decisions and choices. Okay? Yes?
I'm just sort of wondering why there would be this mechanism that seems so faulty. I mean, why this does seem to arise naturally, but
It's because of the principle on which this illusion that we're living in works. Okay? The game is for this odd little thing called the awareness function to grow into something really interesting. Okay? And to do that, it needs some environment that's conducive to growth. So this funny illusion called reality was constructed on an interesting principle that says, in order to get anything done, you act, and then something comes along and tries to stop you. That's the way the universe works. And you keep acting, and something comes along and tries to stop you. And you keep acting, and it tries to stop you. And out of that, a third thing is created. The interaction between what we call around here initiative and resistance, okay, creates a new thing called form. That's how form is created. That's how you bring something from an idea into a physical thing, a reality, okay? As you act on it, you do something, and then everything in the universe tries to stop you. Okay? And you keep acting, and it keeps trying to stop you, and those two things interact and create the form. And those three things interact, and we get the result. So you notice that we have four things here, okay? We got a form, isn't that right? Called the physical body. We got some resistance, called the awareness function. We got the initiative that sort of started the whole thing off. And the result is, whatever I do, that's fourth force. In everything that you look at, there are these four forces. So if the awareness wants to grow and develop, it requires something to resist it. That's how growth is done in this particular reality we live in, okay? I can't tell you why. Don't make a lot of sense to me. Actually, when I think about it, it sounds like a screwy setup, I got to admit. But boy, does it work. The human form is a design to deal with a second force called gravity. The human form is almost entirely built around coming up with some way to get a lump of protoplasm to resist this force that wants to crush you down on the ground and be able to stand anyway. If you look at the design of the human form, that's mainly what it is, isn't it? Is to get a lump of protoplasm able to stand erect and have a couple limbs left over that it can actually do something with. And we have a certain amount of difficulty with the form as a consequence, because there's that constant resistance called gravity pulling at it. And a lot of the problems that we have with the physical form that aren't what we call disease are from that constant dealing with the resistance of gravity, right? We have a lot of problems with this part of the body because it's really tough to hold all this protoplasm erect with a little bit of calcium, okay? And still get suppleness and the ability to move in this incredible way that we do. So there was an initiative. Let's get a form that is not specialized to do anything particularly well. Then it can do everything, because it doesn't have to do the thing it's specialized for all the time. And get it to be able to stand erect and have a couple limbs left over to do things with. Okay, and we pay a bit of a price for that. It creates a bit of resistance for us, but that's the way the form was created. Let's do this thing. It's got an interesting resistance called this force that sucks at it all the time and tries to pull it back and move it around. We get a particular form that is just marvelous, isn't it? It's a spectacular design. And the result is that we're not limited like the rest of the forms on planet Earth to only one thing. We can do anything. Nothing particularly well. There's forms on planet Earth that can run faster than any human being can ever imagine because they're specialized for running, okay? But we can build a car. There are forms specialized to fly. And look at what they have to go through to maintain that. All they can do is eat all day long. That's all they can think about is food because it takes so much energy to propel them through the air like that, okay? All they do is eat. They're specialized for that. I can't fly. But we built a plane. You see? So for life to give us this form where anything is possible for a human being, anything is possible for us, we had to deal with that resistance of gravity in a certain way, and we have a few little problems with it, okay? So I don't mind paying that price for this form. That's just the way X did things. Set up on a principle that initiative meets with equal and opposite resistance. And the two go nowhere. Those two forces working together create the form itself. Okay? And those three forces working together get you where you want it to go. With some effort, one can see that everywhere one looks, because that's the way the universe works. We don't see it. We believe in this crud about cause and effect, okay? But that's the way the universe works. And the first and fourth force is not the same as what we call cause and effect. It's just not. It's a different concept.
Phil, did you say that resistance was equal to initiative?
Always equal and opposing, okay? It'll stop it dead in its tracks. Always.
Does that obtain in every scenario, like a relationship where you're trying to be some sort of person?
It's in everything. That's the way the universe functions. I don't care what level you look at it on. It changes depending on the level you deal with it. I just talked about it in the level of human endeavor, okay? Depending on what level of things you're looking at, like you look on the molecular or subatomic level, you see those four forces in an entirely different way. They have the same set of relationships, although science hasn't figured that out yet. They know about that there are four forces now on a subatomic level, but they haven't quite figured out the set of relationships amongst them yet, okay? Everywhere you look, those four forces are at work. On the level of human activity, that's the way we experience them, is you go to do something and something tries to stop you, they pass a law against it. And sometimes it's as simple as just time. It takes time. I don't want it to take time, I want it now. Unless, of course, I just want to enjoy the experience for it. But, many things that I want to do, I just want to do it. But there's this little thing called time and space and distance and weather and all sorts of things. So resistance isn't always like a human being saying no. It's all sorts of things, okay? When I want to go back to L.A., I really don't want to fly there. I just want to be back in L.A. But I think I'm going to have to deal with a little time and space in between probably, huh? And hop on a plane, and that plane will keep initiating, and time and space will keep resisting, and it'll initiate, and the form is flight. And pretty soon I'll get in L.A.
What if you just want to wave hello to somebody? Is the resistance to gravity?
I didn't quite hear all that.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of it. If I just want to wave hello to you,
yeah.
I initiate that act. Is there really any...
And the form is dictated by the resistance called gravity.
Right.
If there were not that resistance, the wave would come out in some other way that we can't even imagine because we're so used to the resistance called gravity. You got to lift that hand up, and that determines that fluid motion of waving, okay, is the way that those two forces interact with each other. If it were some other second force, then it wouldn't be a wave. I don't know what it would be. That's the one we get, is gravity. It's a pretty common second force in our lives.
So what, I don't mean to quibble, but what if you're orbiting the Earth in a weightless day and you wave at your...
Then you'll have some other second force, won't you? Like a wall. I hope. Otherwise, you make a motion and you'll go off until some little heavenly body sucks you into it, won't you? Because there ain't no resistance. And when you make that motion, there's nothing to stop you, and you're going to keep going on in that direction until you either get sucked out of your little path by some gravity that's there, or if nothing gets in your way, I guess you'll just sail on forever.
Isn't that Newton that you push the thing like that up in space and it won't stop?
Yeah, that don't sound like the way I'd want it to be. How about you? Your first step, you just go flow off in space, and that'd be the end of that. I'm kind of glad gravity's here. Every time I take a step, it pulls me back down. So you got to have other kinds of resistance. You tie yourself to a wall or something, so you don't go floating off into space and not come back. So you make up some other kind of resistance, but you better have it. If your initiative is to maybe come back to Earth someday.
Phil, I'm sorry to hold you on this point one more.
That's
one more
okay.
round. Tell me again what awareness realizes itself through, or develops itself through resistance. By what? What is the resistance to?
Struggling with the self. The not I's, as opposed to the rest of the personality that just encodes skills and so on for being here, is a present from a loving being so that you can struggle with it and grow stronger.
Is there a contradiction between what you said earlier about effortless life and the second force?
Nope. But it sure sounds like it, don't it?
Because you embrace the fact.
How would you like to leave all the second force in the doing out here instead of in here? Aren't you a little tired of the second force in here?
The struggle.
Yeah. That's his question. The struggle is necessary so you can grow strong enough, but you don't need it inside anymore. You can just have it be a normal second force of doing. One who has developed themselves as an awareness function, no longer has the second force in here. So life is effortless. Out here, second force is still necessary to get anything done. But what do I care? I ain't struggling with it. I accept it as a necessary part of getting it done. It's just part of it to me. It's not even annoying. When I moved, I did it the normal way. I told X I'm moving, and I forgot about it. That's the way I usually do things. I kind of rely on X a lot. He's pretty nice. And then a little while later, I said, well, I guess it's time to go do something about it. I looked in the newspaper, and there was nothing there I was interested in. A friend came over and said, oh, let me call the management company of the people who rent me my house. Let's see if they got anything. And they had something. It wasn't in the newspaper. I don't know why. And I never even went to look at it. I said, that's it. I know that's the place. I never even went to look at it. So we called them back, and they said, well, we can't do anything for 4 or 5 days. And I said, well, good. I was afraid this was getting too easy. And it wasn't going to happen because there was no resistance. So good. If it's going to take 4 or 5 days, then I know it's going to happen now. I can start planning to move. Sure enough, 4 or 5 days later, everything went smooth, plunked a little money down, and moved in. But if they'd said, yeah, you can have it now, I would have started to get a little concerned. It's like, I'm not sure what form this is going to take because there's no resistance here. This is just too damn simple. But that's kind of the way I do a lot of things, okay? I let the resistance happen out there. And when it comes, I say, oh, good, I was getting concerned this wasn't going to happen. That's pretty effortless, if you ask me. All I did was initiate by telling X I wanted to do it and then go buy a paper a little while later when I thought the time had arrived, time, place, and circumstance. And then somebody else came along and found the place for me. I'm lazy.
And does that keep you from growing?
No.
Because you passed that.
No, I have not passed growing. I hope
but I
that
mean that
never
aspect
happens.
of it, growing.
I don't need to. I just don't need to do that kind of stuff anymore. To me, that's just the way you do things. Okay, the growing is sure happening, but I can grow in the man-made world. I can get better business skills and so on. I like doing that. I wouldn't mind making a little more money than I make right now. Not important, but it'd be okay. I like growing in that way in the man-made world. Okay, and I can grow in here. And I do that just like anybody else does by taking on something that's a little bit too much for me. And struggling with it until it's not too much for me, and now I've grown a little bit, and then I got to look for something else that's a little bit too much for me. Isn't that right?
You'd be bored if you didn't.
I'd go nuts. So no, growth doesn't stop. But I don't need to grow by struggling, with the not eyes telling me that I got to have non-disturbance. You say, okay, it's a little disturbing. I can't have the place now. Big deal. I don't mind waiting 4 days. That's all right. Doesn't make any difference whether I get it today or 4 days from now, really. So I don't have to struggle with non-disturbance anymore, okay? But that initial struggle with this personality, these not eyes, is what develops the awareness initially, okay? We are literally born with what we need to grow. That's not surprising. It kind of seems to be the way most else works. What we need is right there in front of us, isn't it? When you get beyond needing this, you'll find that the next thing you need is right there in front of you. Okay. But this inner struggle of the awareness to wake up out of this trance that it got into, oh boy, does that make you strong. And when it comes time and you say, okay, I see what's going on here, because part of this is just getting a new education and seeing things in a whole new way, not seeing that it's not just about a place to try to make everything perfect so I can be non-disturbed. It's about seeing maybe what's really going on here. By the time I sort of work with this a little bit, I got a pretty good idea what's going on, what I am, and I make a decision. This is what I want to do with this great gift I've been given called life, and I find that I can actually do it. We had a little, discussion out there earlier where somebody said, well, let's just cut through it. If you say that's the point, to make a new purpose of living, then let's just cut through it and I'll just do that. Good. By all means, do that. Please. If you want or need permission, I don't know why, but if you do, you got it from me, okay? Please, do it. Because I don't want you to just take my word for anything. Go do it. And find out for yourself if you can do it or not. If you can't, then maybe you'll understand that if you do certain things, you may develop the ability to do that one day, but you don't have it now. You think you do, but you don't. If you can, boy, have a great life. Glad I met you. Glad all I had to do was just hand you one little piece of information and you took it and ran. You see, it ain't going to hurt me any, is it? I'll be more than happy for you if you can do it right now. If you can't, we'll know each other for a couple of years and see if we can develop it so you can. Okay? That's fine too. But by all means, try it. Because, that is the bottom line. When you cut through all this, make a new purpose for the life and live it 100% of the time until it becomes the purpose of your life. Try it. I notice most people can't even decide they're going to be in a good mood for more than 5 minutes. I don't know quite how you're going to make a new purpose for your whole life when you can't even stay in one mood for more than a couple minutes, okay? To me, a person who could make an entirely new purpose for their life could certainly decide that they're going to be in a certain mood for a couple minutes and do that, no matter what happens. Somebody comes and pokes you in the nose and you say, well, that's not what I wanted to do, was get mad, then you're not going to get mad. And there's nobody in the world who can rile you up if you don't want to get riled. But we don't believe that, do we? We can't even be in charge of our own inner moods. And we say we're going to make a whole new purpose for our life. Anybody who can live in the way that we're kind of talking can certainly decide what their inner state is going to be. Okay? I mean, I think that's part of being human, is to choose your inner state. And say that maybe I would like to live life in a certain inner state much of the time, except when it's just not appropriate, which is pretty rare. I might find some inner state that works pretty good, and I'm going to hang out there. I found a couple that worked pretty good for me, just about no matter what's going on. One of them is called being vitally interested in everything that's going on. Now, it works pretty good. No matter what's going on, I just get real interested in it, and I find that from that place I can deal with just about anything that comes up. I don't need to get mad. I can just get vitally interested in what's going on. I usually see something that I can do that doesn't require getting ticked off and screaming and yelling and being threatening and doing all this stuff, you see. So there are some moods that one can live in pretty much on a continual basis that are real effective. I think that's part of being a human being. So I'm not going to let this mood that I'm in fluctuate by everything that happens around me, like a little cork bobbing on the waves somewhere, you know. I got no control over it. That's one thing that I can take charge of, the mood that I'm in.
So if somebody pops you in the night, you're all right?
Yeah, what do I
You don't have to
care?
repress, like, getting on.
Repress what? I don't care. That would be an interesting experience. You see, I said vitally interested. I think that would be a very interesting experience. I'm not going to go out looking for it. But I would find many things interesting in that, like how the hell did I get into this predicament? That would really interest me. You know how long it's been since physical violence has been threatened against this body? I would find that fascinating. What the heck did I do to get into this predicament? I've gotten pretty good at not getting into situations like that over the years, okay? That would just fascinate the heck out of me. I'd probably be so busy trying to see that I would forget the other person was even there, to be honest. Okay? It's called vital interest. In every experience, there's something of interest about it, okay? With the exception of some real boring people. I have trouble with that one. Some people, just as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing interesting about their stories. They're interesting, but I don't know about their stories. I don't know about you, but people love telling me their life story, you know, and along about 5th grade, I kind of get a little bored. Yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, I think I have an appointment 5 minutes ago. Any questions or comments about this?
I have a question.
Okay.
Just on terms, when you say self, are you referring to the awareness, or are you referring to the...
Right now, when I say self, I'm referring to the not us.
And what about I?
I usually means the awareness function when I use that word. Yep, you got it. Any other questions, comments? I think we got a dinner reservation about now. 6?
Oh, what? You're not going to do number 7? What?
Okay, number 7.
I said 6:30, between 6:30 and 7.
Okay. 7 is a decision not everyone makes very good. But the gist of it is, it doesn't really belong to one side or the other. I don't know where to put it, okay? But the gist of it is that I am important. Okay? Some people don't make this decision too good, and others make it a little bit too good, don't they? It's like, forget about all the ways to get non-disturbance. I'm just an important person. And I've noticed I'm not. I'm just not important, and people constantly remind me. And I do like to make jokes about it when I'm out with people that know about this stuff with me. You know, somebody pushes their way in front of us, and I just say, oh, don't worry about it, they're important. We're not. Somebody cuts in front of me on the freeway. Well, they're important. You know, they got to get there 2 minutes faster than I do because I'm not important. That's just fine with me. I don't particularly want to be important, okay? But most of us made the decision that we are important. We are the center of the universe. Everything was designed just for me. And all the rest of you better get behind me. Because you don't count. You see? Now, that's perfectly reasonable. That is our experience of reality. As far as we can tell, everything radiates from me. Isn't that right? I'm always in the center of everything every time I look. And I got no problems with that idea. I suspect it was all set up just for me. You guys are getting the benefit because I showed up. But see, that's where it gets into importance. I can say I'm the center of the universe as far as my experience of things goes. That is a fact. Everything goes out from me. And I can say this is all for me. Why not? But I don't know that I'm going to go the rest of the way and say, therefore, you don't count. Maybe that's true for everyone. But the difficulty is that without this decision, you don't think that you're worth doing anything for. So you need this decision. You need to think that you're worth something. Because once you get kind of through this, you're not real sure you're worth anything. So that seventh decision sort of saves us from basically not being able to do anything for ourselves but sit and mope. Feel sorry for ourselves. Okay, it keeps you out there trying. Because after all, I'm important. I think it might be a little more worthwhile to say, there's something about me. I mean, maybe I don't know what it is yet. It's really worth something. But I don't know that I'm important, okay? I suspect that Planet Earth got along pretty good before I showed up. What do you think? Was it doing okay before I got here? Or were you guys in real trouble till I showed up? She would know. And I have this funny feeling that when I leave, it's probably going to do just fine. What do you think? I'm not important to the show. But I think I am worth something. Okay? And I think probably everybody else is too. The outcome of this, these last three decisions, is something around here that we call vanity and pride. And it is quite necessary to us that we have this. Because if we actually sat down and looked at ourselves honestly and objectively, we'd be pretty horrified. So we sort of make up a picture of self. That's what vanity means technically. Vanity, the definition is a false picture of self. We just make up some image of ourselves as being a pretty good person who's trying really hard. And while I have a few flaws here and there, I'm basically working real hard to become better, so it's okay, you see. And we do kind of need that inner image. They call that today, what do they call that? The self, yes, thank you. Okay. That ain't self-esteem, but that's what they call it. And it substitutes for maybe something that is really self-esteem, which is seeing your own value as a living being.
Otherwise you would despair, wouldn't you?
You really would. And then the pride defends you every time it becomes real clear that that false picture is false. It's always got a justification, a story. And if somebody points it out, then you can sort of beat them up until they leave you alone. So it's the defensiveness of that inner picture of self that lets us really act at all. Because kind of once you've been through this a little bit, you feel pretty bad about yourself. And you got to have something to kind of cheer you up and keep you going, okay? The difficulty with it is that this false picture is static. See? It's like painting a pretty statue and then claiming to be the statue. You come up with the perfect human being, and you make a statue out of it, or you draw a pretty picture of it, and you say, that's me. But then you're stuck with whatever that statue is that's perfect. You see, you come up with this ideal person, now you're stuck with that static image. And it doesn't leave much room for freedom and spontaneity and whimsical behavior and a few interesting aspects to life, okay? I don't particularly want to be one and the same person all the time. I think I'd be bored after a while with me. I'm already kind of bored with me. People kind of get ticked off with me because they ask questions about me all the time, and I'm not particularly interested in answering because I heard the answers already 500 times. What do I want to hear it the 501st time? I was real interested in that when I was younger and kind of new to me, and you know, everything was interesting about me, but these days I'm just not that interested in me. People say, well, how am I going to get to know you? Well, you might spend a little time watching. That's how I get to know people. I don't ask people a billion questions about themselves. I just hang out with them and watch them for a while, and I get a pretty good picture of what kind of person they are. You know, I think that's a lot more fun than the 50 questions game. How about you? But I don't want to have a static image like that. I want the freedom to respond to this moment. Okay? Not to be stuck with, I have to be this person. I'll be responsible. But I'm probably going to respond to this moment in possibly some way that never occurred to me in any other moment, okay? It may be something brand new I never think of before. And I may well do that today. Besides, I just kind of like whimming it, you know. If I wake up one morning and I feel like going to do something, I have a tendency to go and do it. I kind of like living that way. Spur of the moment. I don't plan much. But that's me. You can do what you like, okay? Not selling it, but I just kind of like being a little spontaneous every now and again, okay? But these last decisions that blame me and blame others and say I'm important create the need and the ability to set up a false picture of self called vanity. Vanity is not sitting in front of a mirror making yourself pretty. Okay? That's just neat. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with enhancing the body if you want to do it and make it pretty, if that's what you want to do? That's not necessarily vanity, okay? It may be, but vanity is technically having an image of self that is simply not true. Such as I'm one and the same person all the time. Boy, that just ain't true. But we can paint this picture of self that says that I am, and then refuse to see all the contradictions to it, and live in the illusion of me. Except every now and again I do something that's so weird and out of character, according to that picture, that somebody's probably going to point it out, and then I'll have to go into a little bit of defense of it. It's called pride. Sticking up for that picture, okay? I think vanity and pride are pretty useless. If one can live another way, but I think as long as you're stuck with this, they probably have their place. At least to keep you going until you can find something else to do, okay? Any other questions or comments? Okay. Good. Tomorrow we'll go into something different. We managed to get through this today. How about that? Ready to eat? All right.